In a move that stunned the monarchy and blindsided royal aides, Princess Anne has just stepped in front of flashing cameras with trembling composure and made a declaration that could rewrite the future of the British crown. With the world watching, Anne revealed that Catherine, Princess of Wales, has been secretly trained to assume the throne immediately. Why now? And what's been hidden behind palace walls for months? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The air at Sandringham had felt oddly charged even before Anne stepped forward. There was no prior briefing, no indication that a senior royal would be addressing the press, let alone doing so alone. As she emerged from the estate's north entrance, silence swept across the waiting media. The Princess Royal, known for her steadfast discretion, stood firm, eyes steeled, voice controlled, but it was the words that followed which shattered the foundations of royal protocol. Her readiness has been proven. The time is now. That single phrase echoed like thunder across the United Kingdom, and within minutes, across the world. For decades, Anne had been a symbol of tradition, a bulwark against disruption, but today, she became its detonator. Inside royal circles, her announcement was met with chaos. Advisors scrambled to contact Buckingham Palace. News anchors interrupted programming with stunned commentary. Social media exploded into speculation. Even the most seasoned royal correspondents seemed breathless. But amid the chaos, one glaring detail became impossible to ignore. Neither King Charles III nor Queen Camilla were present. They had not been informed. Whether it was intentional or not, Anne had made her move unilaterally, bypassing every conventional channel. "This was never part of the public plan," she added, her words loaded with a gravity that suggested the monarchy's next chapter was already being written quietly, deliberately, and far from the public's eye. Anne's statement wasn't framed as a proposal. It wasn't a gesture of concern. It was a declaration of readiness, a call to transition, to move the crown's weight from an aging monarch to a woman who, by all accounts, had been preparing in silence. Catherine's image, so often associated with grace and poise, now carried a sharper edge, that of quiet power honed in secrecy. What had once been dismissed as tabloid fantasy had just been confirmed as royal reality. And if Anne was the messenger, the implications ran deeper than any official palace communiqué could ever admit. In the hours following the press event, confusion turned into confrontation. Senior aides were locked in urgent meetings. Former prime ministers were contacted. Rumors of constitutional conflict surfaced, but what many didn't realize was that this wasn't a spontaneous rebellion. Anne's words weren't impulsive. They were the endgame of a plan long in motion, buried deep beneath the glittering surface of the monarchy. Behind every royal smile lies a discipline the world rarely sees. For Catherine, her public grace masked a rigorous and clandestine training schedule crafted not for appearances, but for power. From constitutional briefings to psychological endurance tests, what exactly was she being prepared for, and who ordered it? In the shadows of Windsor Castle, away from state dinners and charity galas, a hidden program known only to a handful of royal insiders quietly unfolded. Dubbed Protocol Swan, it was not conceived to enhance Catherine's public image or social polish. It was designed to prepare her for immediate sovereign responsibility under extraordinary circumstances. Initiated in the final years of Queen Elizabeth's reign, the program began as a contingency, but within months, it evolved into something far more urgent. Behind closed doors, Catherine was led through scenario after scenario: economic crises, military escalation, foreign policy flashpoints, even palace hostage simulations. The monarchy, it seemed, was not preparing for the distant future. It was bracing for a shift that could come at any moment. Each day within the program was deliberately isolating, psychologically grueling, and built to test not just intelligence, but resilience. Catherine endured mock interrogations, engaged in deep strategic theory with former intelligence officials, and learned to dissect constitutional documents with retired Lords Chancellor. She was not merely studying protocol, she was being shaped into a ruler. At times, the toll became personal. Her time with William was rationed to the minimum. Even her children were kept at a controlled distance. This wasn't motherhood or matrimony, it was monarchy in its rawest form. Only a select few were aware of the full extent of her training, and chief among them was the woman who had quietly commissioned it all, Princess Anne. One of her final private conversations with Catherine, the late Queen Elizabeth left a single, haunting instruction. Prepare her beyond the crown, not for the crown beyond it. That phrase became the quiet mantra of Protocol Swan. While the world saw Catherine as a picture of elegance and kindness, within the inner sanctum of Windsor, she was dissecting military strategy with generals and memorizing every clause of the Crown Charter. Her days were filled with controlled silence, coded reports, and decision tree maps that anticipated the collapse of normal royal succession. It was ruthless. It was necessary. It was Anne's design. And though Catherine never complained, insiders recall moments when the isolation nearly broke her. Moments when even William questioned the cost. But Anne never wavered. She visited late at night, unannounced, offering whispered encouragement or delivering sealed packets from unknown senders. This wasn't just training, it was transformation. And Anne watched it unfold, stone-faced but resolute, ensuring every weakness was exposed and erased. Because Catherine's ascension wasn't a fantasy, it was a contingency rapidly hardening into reality. But Catherine's preparations weren't a solitary pursuit. They were orchestrated under the watch of someone fiercely protective, strategically brilliant, and utterly relentless. Many saw Anne as stoic, loyal, and dutiful, but beneath that armor was a mind sharpened by years of palace battles. This wasn't a sudden act of rebellion, it was Anne's long game, a vow forged in grief, revenge, and an unbreakable belief in Catherine's destiny. In the days following Queen Elizabeth II's death, Princess Anne disappeared from the public gaze not out of mourning, but recalibration. She had stood closest to her mother in those final months, and with her passing, something shifted deep within her. The weight of history, of duty, of watching the monarchy bend under internal fractures, finally hardened Anne's resolve. For years, she had watched in silence as decisions were made without her input, as the royal institution leaned increasingly into spectacle over substance. But it was Camilla's accelerated rise, her transformation from controversial consort to queen, that tipped something inside Anne. She did not oppose Camilla out of bitterness. It was principle. She had known the rules. She had lived them. Camilla had bypassed them. Through discreet letters and encrypted calls, Anne reconnected with figures from the Queen's old advisory circles, men and women who had once served as the backbone of the Crown's silent intelligence. Former strategists, ceremonial officers, even ex-military aides who owed their loyalty to the late Queen rather than the current king. What they uncovered collectively wasn't scandal. It was vacuum. Charles, burdened by health questions and increasingly reliant on Camilla's circle, had left gaps. Gaps Anne knew would soon become vulnerabilities. Her conclusion was grim but clear. If the monarchy were to survive its next storm, it needed not tradition. It needed transformation, and that transformation had a name. Catherine. Anne's meeting with William took place in the Garden Library of Windsor, shielded from all staff. He was shocked by her directness. Anne, never one for sentiment, laid it bare. Charles lacked the clarity. Camilla lacked the stability. Catherine was the future. But her path would not open unless someone forced it into motion. William didn't agree, but he didn't object either, and that was enough. As Anne prepared to act, she sent a single message to her brother, months before the public would hear a word. "If you stall, I will not." There was no reply, but perhaps the most symbolic moment came late one evening, when Anne handed Catherine a small, leather-bound book, Elizabeth's personal diary, preserved in secret. It was a gesture layered in pain, approval, and prophecy. In that moment, Anne wasn't just passing on wisdom. She was passing on the burden. The entries inside contained reflections, coded instructions, and doubts, many about Charles, none about Catherine. That diary became the spine of Anne's decision. With every word she read, she found confirmation of what she already knew. The Queen had seen the need coming, and Anne was now fulfilling her final will, not through paperwork, but action. But what Anne didn't anticipate was the ripple effect, because in choosing Catherine, she ignited a fury that had been simmering behind palace curtains. The Queen Consort was blindsided, and she did not go quietly. Sources say Camilla erupted in private, calling Anne's announcement a treasonous betrayal. But it was what she did next, summoning allies, issuing veiled threats that sent royal staff into panic mode. It wasn't Charles who informed Camilla of Anne's public bombshell. It was a trembling aide who found her mid-briefing at Clarence House, visibly shaken and barely able to form the words. The Queen Consort reportedly stood frozen for a beat before hurling her glass against the fireplace mantel. To be bypassed, not only as queen but as a royal wife, was an insult she would not suffer in silence. Camilla stormed into her private suite and issued immediate orders. Calls were made to press allies, public relations, veterans, and select members of the royal household who had long benefited from her quiet patronage. The machinery of defense was activated. But this wasn't about public narrative, it was about reclaiming command from a woman she had never seen as a threat. Until now. Within hours, Camilla requested a private audience with Anne. The meeting at Clarence House was brief but explosive. Behind closed doors, voices were raised, doors slammed, and staff cleared from the hallway. Those present later described it as unrecoverable. Camilla accused Anne of betrayal, of Camilla orchestrating a palace coup behind Charles's back. Anne reportedly responded with chilling calm. "You were never part of her plan. You just never realized it." In that moment, the divide between the old guard and the emergent monarchy became irreparable, and Camilla knew if she didn't move fast, she would be swept aside by a tidal wave of legitimacy, one born not of bloodline, but of preparation. Behind the scenes, Camilla's team leaked curated soundbites to friendly media contacts, framing Catherine's training as an overreach, an unauthorized ambition project pushed by Anne. Whisper campaigns circulated, alleging Catherine's fragile state, sowing seeds of doubt. But more disturbing was the emergence of a document Camilla began to reference in private circles. The so-called Legacy Accord. Said to be a secret pact drafted during Charles's early reign, the document allegedly guaranteed Camilla full sovereign rights in the event of Charles's incapacity, a direct threat to any interim power Catherine might hold. Whether the accord was real or fiction became irrelevant. Camilla was wielding it as a weapon, and she wasn't acting alone. In a stunning twist, Camilla arranged a discreet meeting at Royal Lodge with Prince Andrew and Princess Eugenie. The disgraced Duke, long exiled from public duties, was now a chess piece in Camilla's retaliation. Eugenie, always sympathetic to her uncle's exclusion, was drawn into the orbit. There were whispers of promises made about restoration, visibility, titles. Camilla was building a counter-coalition, not to protect Charles, but to protect her own crown. And when she was later overheard snarling, "She may be trained, but I am crowned," the message was unmistakable. She would not be pushed aside, she would fight. Yet while Camilla stirred chaos above the surface, another royal figure moved in silence, one who had once stepped back but now saw an opening to reclaim control. Torn between duty to his father and devotion to his wife, Prince William has become the monarchy's axis of crisis. His next move could either shatter the institution or resurrect it. And as Anne's words reverberated across the nation, William vanished from the public eye. It was a silence that screamed. In the hours following Anne's announcement, every major broadcaster turned their attention to one question: where was the Prince of Wales? For a future king, whose face had so often been the symbol of calm during national upheaval, his absence now felt deafening. No public appearance, no statement, not even a palace-prepared comment. Inside the palace, aides scrambled for plausible explanations, while reporters circled like hawks. The truth, however, was far more devastating. Just hours before Anne stepped in front of cameras at Sandringham, William had met privately with his father. What was said remains classified, even within the highest corridors. But what followed confirmed its gravity. William walked out of the room pale, tight-jawed, and left Clarence House without speaking another word. He didn't return home. He didn't call Catherine. He simply disappeared. Days later, a sealed envelope arrived at Kensington Palace. Delivered by hand, its contents were known only to Catherine, whose reaction told a story no photograph could ever capture. That letter, believed to be from William, marked a turning point. Others whispered it was an apology, a warning, or a request for her to hold firm if he couldn't. The speculation spiraled, but beneath the emotional storm, a more dangerous narrative was brewing, one that raised questions about the very foundation of royal succession. For weeks, internal documents had referenced a confidential clause quietly known as the heir reversal clause, a strategic lever drafted during Elizabeth's final year. If invoked, it could allow the monarchy to shift temporary sovereign duties without formally abdicating or bypassing the throne. In simple terms, it could permit Catherine to act with full authority in William's place, should he be unable or unwilling to proceed. What shook the monarchy more was William's reported arrival at Balmoral's North Wing 3 days into his silence, accompanied by 3 key advisers: Lord Alderton, Dame Rachel Moray, and General Westfield. These weren't ceremonial figures, they were constitutional tacticians, the same names quietly involved in drafting contingency powers before the Queen's passing. Their presence suggested this wasn't about William taking time to reflect, it was about William choosing a path so radical it would either fracture the family or forge a new monarchy. Sources say the meetings inside Balmoral stretched deep into the night, and that William's voice, usually calm, was raised more than once. It was no longer about loyalty to his father, it was about survival, and whether the future of the crown could bear the weight of Charles's hesitations and Camilla's ambitions. Catherine, meanwhile, remained silent, her composure immaculate, but the cracks were evident to those closest. She was a wife caught between her husband's torment and the kingdom's expectation. William was now fighting on 2 fronts, one internal, where his heart begged for preservation, and one external, where the monarchy demanded transformation. It was a burden no heir had ever faced in quite this way, and as questions mounted, one fact became undeniable. William's reckoning had arrived. His silence wasn't an escape, it was the eye of a storm about to rupture the legacy of the Windsors. As William faced his reckoning, another chapter unfolded, one so deeply buried that even the most senior royals whispered about it with dread. Before her death, Queen Elizabeth II reportedly issued a sealed directive known only to a few, but in the wake of Anne's announcement, palace insiders claim its contents are now being enacted, and its instructions name Catherine as acting sovereign in the event of royal incapacity. The document was codenamed Protocol Clarion, a name almost no one outside the Queen's inner circle had ever heard until, quote, now. Buried within the royal archives and protected under the sovereign's seal, it had been drafted during the final years of Elizabeth's reign, when quiet concerns about Charles's health and the growing volatility within the family began to trouble her. It was never spoken of publicly, never debated in court, and never presented to Parliament. This was not a plan for the future, it was a safeguard for collapse. Only 3 people were named in the instruction set: Princess Anne, Lord Alderton, and Catherine, Princess of Wales. And in the hours following Anne's televised revelation, that once dormant plan began to breathe. Palace aides, shaken by the unfolding chaos, confirmed the existence of a locked envelope stored beneath the Clarence House. Vaults, marked only with Elizabeth's royal cipher and dated 6 months before her passing. It had been written by hand. The letter was designed to be unsealed only under what was termed a constitutional impasse, a scenario where the reigning monarch could not fulfill his duties, and succession was either contested or unviable. Insiders report that within days of Charles undergoing a discreet but serious medical evaluation, one rumoured to result in a diagnosis impacting cognitive stamina, Anne invoked the criteria. The seal was broken. The letter was read aloud to a select group in the Crown Chamber, and its contents stunned even those who had served the Queen for decades. Catherine's name was not a suggestion. It was an instruction. The directive stated that, in the event the Crown faces inertia amid illness or indecision, Authority shall be provisionally bestowed upon the Princess of Wales, whose preparation has been completed under direct guidance. The phrase, whose preparation has been completed, sent a wave of shock through the room, confirmation that Elizabeth had not only anticipated this crisis, but had orchestrated Catherine's rise long before the public had any inkling. And alongside her name stood Anne and Alderton, designated guardians of the Crown's continuity, should turbulence prevent orderly transition. It was, by every measure, a constitutional revelation that blew past ceremony and symbolism into legal precedent. Whispers of the directive's implications began to leak beyond palace walls. Senior aides described it not as a handover, but a hand forced by foresight, a quiet war between obligation and optics. And though Charles had not stepped down, and Camilla still held the title of Queen, the directive now carried an authority that no one dared publicly challenge. A former royal secretary was quoted saying, "The Queen saw further than any of them." This wasn't her mistrust in her son, it was her unshakable trust in the institution. What began as Anne's defiance now found its legitimacy in the Queen's own handwriting. The Crown was no longer balancing on preference or palace politics, it was shifting on command. With legal precedent now in play, it was no longer just a family dispute, it had become a constitutional confrontation. Buckingham Palace has become a battlefield of allegiances, with staff divided, courtiers whispering, and family members retreating into fortified estates. The monarchy teeters on the edge of a cold civil war. And at its centre, two women, two visions, one crown. As the Queen's directive began to unfold behind closed doors, the royal household fractured with astonishing speed. What had once been a seamless network of loyalty and hierarchy dissolved into a patchwork of whispered alliances. In the shadows of Windsor, a quiet but unmistakable camp had formed behind Anne and Catherine, and surprisingly, it was Prince Edward and Sophie who became its first visible pillars. The Earl and Countess of Wessex, long considered the monarchy's stabilisers, reportedly declared their support in a private meeting at Bagshot Park, citing Catherine's preparedness and Anne's unmatched judgment. Their allegiance carried weight. But it also triggered unease across the other households because with every show of support, the palace came closer to fracture. Beatrice, meanwhile, was left torn in the crossfire. Once close to Catherine and quietly admired by Anne, she now found herself under pressure from Camilla's sphere. Sources say she broke down during a private dinner with her father, Prince Andrew, begging for clarity, desperate to avoid becoming collateral in a war she never asked for. But the division didn't stop there. Eugenie, the more outspoken of the sisters, placed a call to Prince Harry, reportedly encrypted and routed through intermediaries. What was said remains unknown, but what followed was panic. A security team from Clarence House was dispatched to intercept any potential leaks to the Sussex Circle. And within hours, a confidential memo from the Crown Chamber was leaked. The subject line read, "Prepare for transitional optics." It was the clearest indication yet that the monarchy wasn't merely reacting to Anne's move, it was planning for change. Inside Clarence House and Sandringham, staff loyalty began to crumble. Long-serving aides submitted sudden resignations. Communications officers refused to approve press releases without legal review. At least one senior advisor reportedly requested a transfer to Balmoral, citing irreconcilable internal direction. The walls of tradition were trembling, and amid the growing vacuum, a most unexpected figure was contacted: Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. His presence in the crisis was not ceremonial, it was constitutional. His role, should a monarch be deemed unfit or a succession be contested, was to provide spiritual and national guidance. That he had been summoned was a clear sign. This was no longer palace theatre, it was approaching religious legitimacy. In hushed tones, aides began referring to the factions not as households, but as regimes. The tension was no longer personal, it was ideological. Catherine represented continuity through evolution. Camilla stood for preservation through control, and both had the means to command loyalty. But only one had the wind of Elizabeth's will behind her. What had started as a whisper of succession had now hardened into an institution-wide reckoning. And just as factions solidified, the public watching with bated breath unleashed a storm that neither camp could control. The streets outside Kensington Palace swelled with voices, not of protest, but of support. As news of Catherine's training and readiness spread, the public sentiment shifted. Petitions erupted, flags were raised. For the first time in generations, a royal coup had the people's blessing. What began as whispers behind palace walls was now echoing through the streets of London. Social media became the monarchy's unexpected battlefield, and Catherine, silent, poised, unseen, became its unchallenged symbol. The hashtag number Queen Catherine surged to the top of trending lists across Europe, then globally. Within hours, it was emblazoned on banners, signs, candles. Videos of the princess at past engagements once overlooked were resurfaced, now framed as evidence of quiet strength, grace under pressure, and long-standing leadership. TikTok montages became declarations. Instagram became an archive of her silent reign. It was no longer just a debate about succession, it was an emotional uprising. One rooted not in rebellion, but in longing for certainty. And in Catherine, the public saw stability wrapped in dignity. Vigils formed at Windsor, Sandringham, and Kensington. Not for mourning, but for recognition. Thousands laid flowers, held handwritten notes, and sang hymns of unity. One message, scribbled in permanent marker and taped to the palace gate, read simply, "She never asked for the crown, that's why she deserves it." In the heart of this surge, major newspapers broke rank. The Sunday Herald printed a front-page editorial titled, "She is already our queen in spirit." Even long critical outlets softened, acknowledging what the palace had tried to contain. Catherine was no longer waiting. She had already arrived in the minds of millions. Then came the misstep. In what was intended to be a show of continuity, Camilla made a brief public appearance outside Clarence House. The crowd gathered was thin, the reception icy. Footage showed polite claps mixed with visible tension. Behind her, staff appeared uneasy. And online, the moment was quickly memed, dissected, ridiculed. Camilla, once seen as the monarch's steadying partner, was now cast as a symbol of the past refusing to let go. It wasn't hatred, it was rejection. The monarchy was moving, and she was standing in its way. Through all of this, Catherine remained silent. No press statement, no staged appearance, just stillness. And that silence, rather than weakening her position, transformed into a kind of moral authority. People read meaning into every absence. Her refusal to fight publicly was seen not as weakness, but strength. Where others scrambled, she waited. And the public followed. Inside the BBC, production teams began working in secrecy on a contingency broadcast titled Operation Regency Override. Schedules were cleared. Historical footage prepared. Commentators briefed. They weren't responding to a command, they were preparing for inevitability. Because as the tide turned in Catherine's favour, it became clear that this was no longer about formal declarations. It was about a nation's emotional pivot. The monarchy was shifting, and the people had chosen their queen. But in the midst of the storm, the final card remained unplayed until Anne delivered one last message that shattered everything we thought we knew. In an unprecedented second appearance, Anne reappeared before reporters with a velvet-sealed envelope, Queen Elizabeth II's final handwritten testament, and what it contained has thrown the entire monarchy into irreversible motion. The crown is not in crisis, it is mid-transition. The world had barely begun to digest the fallout from Catherine's surge in public support when Anne delivered her most devastating blow yet. With no formal announcement, no security procession, and no palace aide by her side, she stepped into view, holding a document that would permanently alter the path of royal succession. The envelope bore the Queen's signature in embossed gold. For those familiar with royal protocol, the implications were immediate. This wasn't just a letter, it was a directive of sovereign weight. And when Anne began reading its contents, a hush fell over every royal estate, press room, and government chamber across the country. The Queen's words were not a reflection, they were an order. When the time of silence ends, "The swan shall rise." The coded phrase was unmistakable. The swan was Catherine, and silence had now ended. The letter went on to invoke Clause 6 of the Crown Charter, a rarely referenced but legally binding provision that allows the regency to be activated if the reigning monarch is deemed incapacitated or unable to perform the duties of the crown with consistency and clarity. No abdication. No need for public referendum. Just a stroke of pre-authorized will. In that moment, Anne wasn't speaking as a sister or even a princess royal. She was acting as executor of the late Queen's final command. The regency had begun, and Catherine's immediate authority was no longer a matter of debate, it was law. Behind the palace gates, Charles reportedly received the news in solitude. A senior aide who had worked under both sovereigns described the moment simply. He lowered his head and said, "I knew this day would come." There was no resistance, no appeal, just resignation, because deep down, Charles had read that letter long ago. He had been present when it was sealed, and though he had hoped the moment might never arrive, the moment had now spoken for itself. Catherine was summoned that evening to Windsor's Oak Room. There, accompanied only by Anne and Lord Alderton, she was briefed on the precise parameters of her regency. It was not a coronation, it was not symbolic, it was operational. With immediate effect, she would be advised by the Crown Chamber, briefed by MI5, and recognized as sovereign in all but title. The machinery of monarchy had already begun shifting beneath her feet, and in that dim-lit chamber, Anne looked to Catherine with a calm finality and spoke the words now echoing through royal history. The crown moves forward, not backward. What happens next is not just royal history, it's a new monarchy being born before our eyes. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.